Please listen carefully.
Hello, universe. Welcome to the Optimist Daily Update. I'm Ariel Tienko.
And I'm Kristy Jansen, and we are part of the team behind the Optimist Daily, making solutions the news. We bring you reader-funded solutions news every day in order to change the tenor of news media, social media, and the direction of your day to help us all get focused on solutions.
7 days a week, we publish positive news stories written by award-winning journalists and delivered online to your inbox and through our social channels. And also, we are sharing these solutions in a commute-worthy, walk-worthy, under-the-sea-worthy podcast. Today is Thursday, the 31st of March, 2022. How are you doing, Kristy?
I'm good. I'm feeling a bit meditative and thinking about how to maintain my center when things around me feel chaotic.
And so far, have you thought of anything that will help you do that?
Well, I'm really trying to be good about my gratitude journal and saying thank you for the little things, connecting to that as I open my day. That helps me. It was funny. So my son's learning to drive, and for the first time, I took him on the mountain pass where he lives with his father. Mm-hmm. We drove up that pass, and it's a twisty road, 55 miles an hour.
Sounds kind of nerve-wracking.
Yeah, exactly. And it's, cars are coming right. And it was the first time he had driven over 50 miles an hour because the speed limit on this road is 55.
Oh, wow.
So he was in control. And there was one curve we went around, and there was trucks coming towards us. And I was like, my anxiety was.
Did you have your hand on the little?
I was holding on. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, take it down to 45. We're going around a curve, whatever. I was I was trying to be really calm, but also I was really kind of afraid. He was fine, and he was very calm. And when we got to where we were headed, he's like, yeah, I was fine. You're the one who was anxious, whatever. Yesterday, I picked him up, and we were driving on the same road. And now I was driving because it was rainy, and also he didn't have his permit with him, so I couldn't let him drive. But he was teasing me the whole time. Every time I'd go 60, he was like, oh, you're going 60 miles an hour. He was
just giving it back a little bit.
Giving it back to me. He was giving me the hardest time, but it was really kind of fun. And I was thinking about how special it is to have those kinds of experiences, to share them with your teenager, and being reminded of how I feel lucky that I have him in my life.
That's great. That's the first thing that you can write in your gratitude journal again.
Exactly.
I should start one. I've really been letting my journaling go a bit.
The thing that I figure is if I can sort of cleanse my anxiety through that, I have a better foundation for tackling the day. That's my approach.
Yeah, I guess mine is yoga. And even when I'm really busy, I just want to get 10 minutes in and I feel good.
Yeah.
Plus the sweat makes my hair look better. So, sometimes I just do a couple sun salutations before going out and be like, all right.
Just to get a little bit of a movie. Exactly. That's good. It's part of your beauty routine.
Yeah, well, I used to live by the ocean, the warm ocean, because I guess the Netherlands is still by the ocean. And I would just get the salt water in my hair. And now I have to rely on the salt of my sweat. But speaking of oceans and water, should we head into our stories today?
Let's head into our stories for the day, yes. I can go first.
Okay.
My headline reads, Eco-friendly algae oil could finally solve palm oil's drawbacks. Palm oil. It's one of these substances that we use in so many products. And for a while, it was seen as a positive thing because it doesn't have cholesterol, or it says it doesn't have cholesterol because it's not made out of an animal. Also, it's a natural product as opposed to a petroleum product, and it's the most widely used vegetable oil. It's found in about 50% of the products on our supermarket shelves, from pizza dough to shampoo.
Shampoo? Really?
Yes.
Oh,
it's
wow.
a stabilizing additive. It's an emulsifier. It keeps things together. It also gives processed foods a creamy consistency. So it's kind of a cool thing. Plus, it's used as a cooking oil in many regions of the world. But because it is so cheap and efficient to produce, the demand continues to grow, and that fuels deforestation in countries like Indonesia and Malaysia, where the rainforests get cut down to make space for palm tree agriculture because it's actually a productive crop for these developing economies. And yes, it's cholesterol free because it's a plant food as opposed to an animal based food. It does contain 52% saturated fats. It's those kinds of fats which are linked to issues like heart disease or stroke or cardiovascular problems. So even though it's not cholesterol laden, it may not be a healthy alternative. So what's the solution? Well, in a bid to come up with a better, cleaner, greener, healthier alternative to palm oil, scientists at Singapore's Nanyang Technology University and Malaysia's University of Malay got together and they've started working with a microalgae called Chromochlorus sophingenesis, which is a microalgae that has some cool properties. It's a little scientific, but there is a way to cultivate it and create an oil which has a lot of similarities in terms of its quality and how it works to palm oil, but it has a much lower environmental impact.
Wow, algae is just popping up everywhere these days.
Algae and mushrooms are two really
things we write a lot about.
Things we write a lot about because they are potential sources for a lot of the products that we've grown to use and love that have lower environmental impacts. And because they're lower in the food chain, so to speak, you don't have to cut down a forest to grow algae and to create this algae oil. It is kind of a chemical experience to get this microalgae to create oil by using pyruvic acid, which is an organic acid that's very common in living cells, with the microalgae solution in a liquid growth medium. And then they use ultraviolet light to encourage rapid photosynthesis. And in doing that, it produces oil, which after just 2 weeks, the algae can then be removed and then treated with a methanol solution, which helps to separate the algae proteins from the oils. So it's a science experiment.
Yeah, it sounds kind of mad sciencey.
Mad sciencey, but the harvested oil, and this is after just a couple of weeks, has similar qualities to palm oil, but it doesn't have the high concentration of the saturated fatty acids. In the current state, the technology can produce enough oil out of 160 grams of algae to make a 100-gram chocolate bar. So it's kind of efficient, but I think that if it scales up, they will build new efficiencies into the system, into the process. And the thing that's interesting about algae, because it is something that grows so quickly, you can create a lot of mass with relatively short time frames. Mm-hmm. And you don't have to cut down a forest, right? And those palm trees probably take, at least 3 to 7 years to grow in order to be able to produce the oil you need. I don't know. This process has another sustainable technique. They're creating the pyruvic acid out of fermented organic waste.
This is a very Kristy story. There's the fermentation.
It's all about the circular economy and fermentation. And so the artificial ultraviolet light, which they're using in the test process, could be substituted with sunlight when you get to a larger scale production facility. So the artificial light is just to test the process and make it rapid. Nanyang's Professor William Chen, who's the lead scientist of this study, has really honed in on the concept of the circular economy. And that's part of what's motivating them. He says, we're capitalizing on the concept of establishing a circular economy, finding uses for would-be waste products and re-injecting them into the food chain. That's part of their goal. He goes on to say, and this is a quote, "In this case, we rely on one of nature's key processes, fermentation, to convert that organic matter into nutrient-rich solutions, which can be used to cultivate algae, which not only reduces our reliance on palm oil, but keeps carbon out of the atmosphere." And so this is one of those emerging stories that I'm really interested in following.
Yeah, that's kind of a hopeful story coming from under the waters.
Yeah. Algae's grown in water. So yeah, there you go. In liquid. So what's your article then?
Well, my headline also has to do with hope emerging from the water, let's say. Researchers discover more than 200 freshwater fish species. And this is really encouraging because usually the news is talking about, another species that we've lost or species that are struggling due to habitat loss and overhunting or fishing and the ripple effect of pollution. But last year, scientists had actually discovered more freshwater fish species, 212 to be exact, and that is according to a new report by the conservation organization Shoal. So the shoal conservation program manager, Harmony Patricio, said that this is actually a really special kind of discovery because these types of numbers, this level of new discovery for organisms, happens more for plants or insects, but not really for vertebrates. It's an indication that there are still hundreds and hundreds more freshwater fish out there in the world that scientists don't know about yet. That's partly a quote from Patricio himself. And he also says that many of the newly described species have pretty unique and unexpected traits. Because sometimes, you read about a scientific discovery of a new species and you're like, it looks exactly like the other species. You'd have to be a scientist to know.
Like why is that? How is that different?
But apparently these new fish, one of them was named after an X-Men character. It's called I'm going to try and say this right. Hopliancistris wolverine. And the researchers gave it this name because it has hidden weapons. So
it's named after Wolverine? I like it.
Yeah, because, he's like... Yeah, I guess people listening to the podcast wouldn't have been able to see me take my fingers out like Blade. So another quote from Patricio is, this species has strong lateral curved spikes called odontodes,
odontodes, I think.
Odontodes, tucked under the gill covers that can be extended to jab anything that tries to mess with them. And he also added that those responsible for collecting this fish had quite a few finger injuries during the process. So scientists were also particularly thrilled about a blind swamp eel that was discovered in a Mumbai well. And one of the team members who discovered the eel, a naturalist named Tejas Thackeray, posted the eel on Instagram last year with a caption reading, "Pleased to introduce you to a species we collected a few years ago and worked on throughout the pandemic. A journey full of ups and downs, and today it finally gets to see the light of day, presenting a new blind hypogean freshwater eel from my city." Oh dear. Racthamytis mumba, the Mumbai blind eel. Well, I guess the eel wouldn't see the light of day because it's blind, but we see the eel, and this is very exciting. Freshwater fish populations are constantly facing so many threats, like the ones that I listed before: pollution, habitat loss, invasive species, overfishing. But researchers hope that people will take this news of the 212 new species as more motivation to conserve and protect the environment and all the living creatures in it. So this really caught my attention.
And I think one of the things that this story reminds me of also is that sense that nature is very resilient in a lot of ways. And all we need to do is step back and lessen our destructive impacts, and things can rebound pretty quickly. Yeah. It's hopeful in that it's not like the 6th grade extinction, which we've read about. Elizabeth Kolbert wrote about that in her wonderful book, caused by human activity on this planet. We're losing millions of species every day, millions of animals every day. But the nice thing is nature can come back. And the fact that there's so many different species that we have yet to identify and uncover, and their cool features like the X-Men Wolverine fish. I don't want to try to say what it is. Or the blind eel, which lives in wells in India. That's kind of cool. Who knows what other mysteries may be lurking in the rivers of our world and the depths of our ocean. That's cool. Thanks for sharing that. A few other headlines from today's Optimist Daily include Troy Kotsur becomes first deaf man to win an acting Oscar. His speech was so precious. Also, lab-grown meat can reduce your pet's carbon paw print. I like this story too because my dog will never eat a vegetarian diet, no matter what. So, but yeah, what else is on the headlines today?
We've got, this one's for your dog, 10 key ingredients for your plant-based pantry. This group of cells is responsible for our decision-making, and this algorithm makes predicting the future more accessible. All of that and more is available on theoptimistdaily.com. We promise to continue to share positive, solution-based stories with ideas on how you can participate in this changing world and ensure it is changed for the good. We will also continue to cover the current events with accuracy, legitimate sources, and offer you the information needed most to chart new paths for all of us.
And if you have the means, please consider becoming an emissary on the optimistdaily.com and starting at just $5 a month. You can support reader-funded independent journalism and support us for free. You can share us on social media, forward their story to a friend or to your whole friend group, include it in a newsletter for your family, and make sure to leave us positive reviews on the podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Be part of the solution changing consciousness that addresses our world's biggest challenges with that problem-solving mindset. Thanks everybody for listening, and thanks everybody for helping keep the Optimist Daily free to all who need it, supported by those of us who can. We'll be back tomorrow with more solutions.